Okay, Grant, take it away.
All right, thanks, Courtney. Good afternoon and welcome back to many of you. We're excited to continue our 2021 NAD Spring Development Series today with session number 4 of 8. This series is going to take us right up to our virtual convention in July, and I wanted to thank you all for joining us and your dedicated support of our NAD community. My name is Grant Kelly. I'm the Senior Associate AD at Johns Hopkins University. And once again, I want to personally thank our NAD Digital Committee members for putting together this series. We want today's discussion to be interactive, so please feel free to post your questions to the Q&A section, and we'll do our very best to answer all of them throughout the session. Leading and moderating our discussion today is Matt Borman. Matt joined the University of Georgia staff in February of 2017 after serving 8 years with West Virginia University Development Office, most recently as the Senior Associate AD from 2012 to 2016. Matt is a native of Williamsburg, Virginia, received his bachelor's degree in business administration from Lynchburg, Virginia College in 2001, and a master's degree in sports management from West Virginia in 2003. He and his wife, Carter, have 2 daughters, Mary Carter and Winnie. All right, Matt, appreciate you. Thanks, and take it away.
Thanks a lot, Grant. We've got a great group today on our panel with these up-and-comers, and just wanted to give them a quick intro before we get into some of the content, and I throw out some questions for them. So the first member of our panel is Chris Hawthorne from Elon University. Chris graduated from the University of Minnesota, where he was a member of the football team. Chris is currently the Associate AD for Development at Elon, where he oversees all athletic fundraising efforts. Chris has also had stops at Iowa and Bowling Green. Thanks for being with us, Chris. Janelle Shaw is currently the Assistant AD for Annual Giving at Rice. Janelle is a double graduate of Eastern Michigan with her undergraduate degree in biochemistry, which I hope this doesn't hurt anybody else's feelings, but is the smartest person on this panel, including the moderator. And she also has her MBA from Eastern Michigan. She worked at James Madison University before she began her current role at Rice in 2018. Mike Murray is the Assistant AD for Advancement at University of Illinois, Chicago. Mike has been at UIC for almost 2 years with previous experience at Penn, West Point, Temple. Mike is also a 2013 graduate of Temple University. And last but not least, we've got Emily Wayland, who is the Assistant Director of Priority Seating and Parking at the University of Virginia. Emily is a 2017 graduate of the University of North Carolina and was also a GA with the Rams Club before her time in Charlottesville. So thank each of you for being with us, and we're looking forward to hearing what you guys have to share with the group. So the first question we're going to ask all of you and give you each a turn to talk about is, tell us about your journey into athletics development and how did you get to the role that you're in today? We're going to start with you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you everyone for being here. So like Matt said, I'm at UVA and I actually have now transitioned as the interim director of the annual fund. So that was pretty recent. But I started at UNC Chapel Hill. I majored in math and psychology, so absolutely not in athletics. But I was working in football recruiting for a while and then event management, and then got connected to the Rams Club that way. And I found kind of a love of fundraising and a love of athletics and thought, well, if I can combine the two and make a career, fantastic. So I ended up going to grad school for sport administration, staying at UNC, graduating in 2019. And then through connections and people that I've talked to, I ended up at UVA in spring of 19. And then again, January, I've gotten now promoted as the interim director of the annual fund.
I can help.
Yeah, we're going to try to make sure we unmute myself every time I talk. Janelle, can you expand on your start in the career and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Kind of like Emily, I didn't start off in sports. As you heard, I have an undergrad in biochemistry. I worked a while in pharmaceutical research. And I found out that that wasn't for me. I went back to school to get a degree in sport management, MBA. And while at Eastern Michigan, I did an internship in marketing and in development. And I stuck around in the development office because I really just it really stuck with me, and it really was something that I really enjoyed, just talking with donors and really just connecting student athletes with people that wanted to support them on a deeper level. And that's really just something that really spoke to me and made me want to be a part of college athletics. And so from there, I applied to many positions and accepted a role at James Madison University. And from there moved on to Rice, where I was fortunate enough to be able to move up to where I am in the current role, where I've had great mentors with the current staff around me. So yeah, it's been a very interesting ride.
Thanks, Janelle. Mike?
Sure. Thanks, Matt, and appreciate everybody for being here. I guess different than Emily and Janelle, I started out as a high school athlete that just really wanted to stay involved in sports. And it started a little late for me. I didn't realize until after my senior year basketball season that I wasn't going to play in college. I probably should have known that by how much I did not play in high school. But I decided to stay in my backyard in Philadelphia and attended Temple University and enrolled in their sport and recreation management program, which I think at the time was nationally renowned, and they do a great job of positioning the undergrads there very well for a career in sports. So I spent all 4 years there really trying to figure out what exactly in the sport industry I wanted to do. And my first opportunity came up in ticket sales and an opportunity to stay at Temple, working with IMG Learfield Ticket Solutions. So I was an account executive for football and men's basketball there, selling season tickets, partial season groups, and all that good stuff. And really learning a lot about that specific portion of the business. But when I really started to feel like I wanted to do more or have something else that I was working towards, development came up as an opportunity after reaching out to the dean of our school at the time at Temple. And he helped connect me with an alum that was at the time working at Penn in their development office. And from there, kind of took off for me and into getting into fundraising. I was able to, this is in 2014, I was able to start work as an athletics development coordinator at Penn. And there I was able to, for 3 years, really work side by side with a lot of people that were slightly ahead of me experience-wise in fundraising, and really helped bring me along and teach me what we were doing. And then that rolled into me going to West Point to be more of a frontline fundraiser, where I was from 2017 until 2019 when I got here to UIC now as assistant AD for advancement here. So it's been a kind of a laser focused journey for the most part, but yeah, it's been interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And Chris, if you can expand on your journey as well, that'd be awesome.
Appreciate it, Matt and Grant and Matt and Jason. Appreciate you guys having us all on. It's great to be with this group. My journey's not that too dissimilar from what everyone else has shared. I think everyone kind of falls into fundraising one way or the other. I've not yet met someone who was kind of destined to be a fundraiser from the moment that they entered college. My experience is no different. I was a football student athlete at Minnesota and actually was graduating early and needed something to help fill 6 months worth of rent that I owed in lockstep with my teammates that I was living with. And just so happened to have an internship open in the Golden Gopher Fund at the University of Minnesota at the time. Said, yeah, I'll answer the phone. I'll do whatever you guys need as long as the check comes on time and I can pay for my rent. Really figured out that I loved it, and it wasn't raising money, which is what I thought I was getting into. It was learning about the institution more broadly. It was connecting with people at seminal points of passion that they have regarding the student athlete experience. And I parlayed that into a career to this point through a relationship that I had at Minnesota. Had some inroads to a couple of key individuals at Bowling Green, Dan Meyer and Kit Hughes, that opened up a door for me to kind of create my career. Started off in the annual fund side, and then got on the major gift side during my time at Iowa and at Minnesota. The role and the opportunity here was probably the real unique one, in that I didn't have a prior existing relationship with someone here that kind of led to that opportunity. Iowa and Minnesota both were kind of Big Ten connections, if you will. The opportunity here was very different in that it was a search firm. It was a very unique process. It was during a global pandemic. So that process in and of itself was very atypical, but very, very grateful to be with the team that I'm with here today and to be a part of this great industry.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And you kind of expanded on how maybe networking wasn't the exact path that you took from getting to Minnesota to Elon, but in your career, how important has networking been, and how some of your transitions been helped by networking?
Yeah, I think the word networking may get a poor rap. I think it evokes this notion of a transaction. I think our industry is 100% about relationships. And I've been really, really blessed and fortunate throughout my career to develop some tremendous relationships with people that I look at more through the lens of a friendship than anything. People that I can call and bounce ideas off of or seek counsel from. It's been paramount. And this unique situation here was one where a pre-existing relationship that I had with someone led to a call to the search firm that then ended up placing me in this role. So I think they're critical. I think how you treat others certainly matters. And I've started to learn that more and more the older I've gotten. But it's everything in this industry. It's everything with the donors you work with. It's everything with the coaches and the administrators that you work with. And it's everything with the people that you work with internally day to day as well. So it's critical.
Thanks, Chris. Emily, you transitioned from one ACC school to another. How did a network help you make that type of transition?
Yeah, so everyone knows everyone in this industry, and if you've not figured that out yet, you will shortly, especially within conferences. So my boss at the Rams Club, when I was a GA, he knew my future boss at UVA really well from networking, ACC meetings, NAD, just anything and everything. And so when I started the hiring process, basically this first semester of my second year of grad school, I started reaching out to anyone and everyone, and mostly schools that I thought aligned with what I wanted to work with. So I would just sort of call people, email people, and he put me in touch with people at UVA. I was actually using their data for my thesis in grad school as well. So I had that connection already. And then they didn't even post the job. They had a job sort of open and they were forming it and sent me the job posting and said, are you interested? Do you want to throw your name in? So it never really officially was posted. It was all kind of word of mouth. And I ended up interviewing and applying and then receiving the job, thankfully. And so connections are huge. And Dirk knows, my boss at UVA knows the head of the Rams Club very well. So they had connections called. So that was definitely, I don't think I would be at UVA without my connections from UNC.
That's awesome. Thanks, Emily. Mike, you transitioning out of Philadelphia where you'd been pretty much your whole life and into West Point and then UIC. How has your network assisted in that move, in those moves?
Sure. Great question. I think being in Philadelphia for the first 25 years of my life, really, I kind of shaped who I was around being there. So leaving that area and branching out was definitely a bit of a challenge, and stepping outside of my comfort zone was something I appreciated having the opportunity to be able to do. But my network really was very strong in helping me grow into the position that I had at West Point and eventually here at UIC. And I put a lot of the emphasis for those moves I've made on the time I spent at the University of Pennsylvania, working alongside a team that really everybody, I think by the time I had gotten there within 6 months, we were all new with under a year or so under our belts. A few other folks on that team had been there a little bit longer, but I got just the way we were set up there. I was able to work directly with a couple of major gift officers, and one of them happened to had previously been at West Point, came to Penn where we worked together, and then went back to West Point, and he had stayed one of my good friends and mentors. And as I was actually looking at other positions and other things I might look to transition to from Penn, he kind of waited until it was the right time for him to tell me about a job that they were getting ready to post and something that he thought I would fit very well into. And so being able to make that transition and go work for someone that I had already built a very close relationship with and had some success working alongside of, it made me pretty comfortable to make that move somewhere where I probably would not have really been urged to do it on my own, but having somebody that I knew I could already trust and work well with worked out really well there. And then kind of the same thing happened for UIC. I'd say a lot of my former coworkers keep making the mistake of hiring me again, but it seems to work out for us for the most part. And it's kind of the same story there, where I had stayed in touch with another Penn colleague who, by the time he came out here to UIC and I was looking to make another transition, he had a position here that opened up that looked like we'd be able to kind of do it again. And so that's what we've been doing here for the past couple of years. And it's been instrumental for me to have that experience of continuing to work for people that I have worked with and built rapport with. So it's been very impactful.
Great. That's a great perspective. Thank you, Mike. And Janelle, the previous three panelists kind of talked about externally how they use the network to transition. You have a unique perspective, having moved up internally, and how did a network help you make that move?
Sure. So from my perspective, we kind of had not necessarily a restructuring, but I guess a reimagining of how we wanted to attack our approach to development. And our chief development officer, when he was put into his position, had a vision for what he wanted to do with the program when he was put into that role. And he had a vision for what he wanted me to do in that position. And I asked what I needed to do to kind of get to where I wanted to be and what I needed to do to kind of advance in my career. And I tried to do my best to meet or exceed those expectations, and didn't go back to say, like, every other week, you know, hey, am I doing these things that you're asking of me? Hey, is it time for that promotion yet? Hey, am I able to move up yet? Can I get that promotion? Am I meeting these criteria? I just, you know, put my head down, did what I needed to do, made sure that I was doing the best that I could do, made sure that I was doing what I thought I was capable of. And, you know, when the opportunity came, I was ready for it. And, you know, it wasn't like I had been pestering, or that I was kind of waiting for a handout, or I had kind of been threatening to leave, or doing that thing where, you know, it was, hey, had Janelle been asking for this promotion? I know you mentioned our AD wasn't like, hey, I know you, to our chief development officer, I know you keep mentioning Janelle wanting to put her in this position and all of this. Has she been asking for this? Have you keep pushing for her? You keep pushing for her. Why are you pushing for her this hard? It's because she's doing the work, because I see it in her, because, you know, she's the person that fits in this role. You know, if you do the work and people see that you're the one that needs to go in this role, you'll be rewarded for it. So I don't ever feel like I need to do anything outside of myself to get to someplace that I need to be. You know, I think my work speaks for itself, and I think that that's kind of how I get to where I need to be.
I think there's certainly a balance there, and you have obviously handled it gracefully and with success. So good work there. There was a question, a follow-up through the chat. Brandon Vetter complimented each of you with obviously strong numbers, and being a team player and networking well has helped you all advance to where you currently are today. But is there anything outside the box that you guys think helps you in your career move up that ladder? Anybody have any thoughts there for Brandon?
I can take that one.
Thank you.
Things that are outside of the box, like with development, there's only so many ideas and and so many ways to ask people for money. So, you know, like you're you're not going to invent anything new or things like that. So I think that being able to have that, the ability to accept failure a bit is really more beneficial than being able to succeed, because I think that being able to accept failure allows you to enjoy your successes more, and then to like really pinpoint why the successes worked. Because if you don't accept your failures, then you dwell on them more, and then it makes you it doesn't make your, like, if you sorry if you can't accept your failures, then your successes get pushed by the wayside, and then people will focus on your failures more. And so if people are focusing on your failures, that's all they see. So like I said, there's nothing new in development coming out. So everyone is running the same race. We're all on the same track, you know? So standing out becomes more difficult in this type of career, and it's a limited field. There's only so many schools, there's only so many positions. So you have to put your own unique spin on it. And being that type of person who is secure in knowing who you are and saying, yes, I have messed up, I have done this incorrectly, taking it, owning it, I have failed, I won't do that same thing again, moving on and making it better the next time helps you move on. Like building on top of your failure instead of letting your failure build on top of you. That's the best way to move on, like to make yourself better and stand out.
It's a good way to put it.
I can kind of piggyback on that and just say from my time starting out as account executive with ticket sales, it's similar in a lot of ways to fundraising, but the amount of times you fail are going to be more likely than not more often than the times that you succeed. So being able to brush it off, get to the next one, and knowing you did what you had to do or did it the right way on that first attempt, or maybe it didn't work out well, that's one of the, I think, really important things, to be able to just keep it moving and get to the next thing without losing your drive and passion for what you're doing.
No doubt. So as Chris mentioned earlier, fundraising doesn't really seem like the type of profession that people are going into their college career and saying, I want to go and be a fundraiser. Why did you guys choose this industry, and really what was your motivation for starting your career in fundraising? Emily, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I actually worked for a nonprofit when I was an undergrad, and we did mostly work with UNC Children's Hospital. And so it was geared toward that. I was on the executive board. So I was doing a lot of fundraising, but it was not, and I hate to say it, it was not something that really drove me. And again, I hate to say that, children with cancer, obviously that is a big thing. But for me, what I wanted was more of the relationships with people and something I could bond with them over. And so going to athletic events, I grew up going to actually UVA games with my dad. It was always a big family thing. I played sports growing up, which most people that get into sports like sports in some capacity, hopefully. So I found that connection was a lot easier for me to talk to people about and to relate to donors, to relate to fans. And you're all, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you came from. You come to a game and you're cheering on your team. And that's what is really cool and very special. So for me, that was kind of what prompted me to want to get into fundraising with athletics, is having that tie and just getting to know student athletes. I tutor student athletes as well. So that has been really cool to get to see. A lot of them wouldn't be where they are without, us fundraising for them. And a lot of them have great stories. They're doing great things in the community. So being able to help sort of share those stories with donors that maybe they wouldn't hear about otherwise, that is also kind of a driving factor for me.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And Mike, what made you want to transition from the ticket sales side of things into development?
Sure. I talk all the time about how it's that ticket sales opportunity. I think it's a great way to get started, and some people are going to be really driven and attracted towards that. But one really good thing about what I was able to do as an undergrad was try a lot of different things and figure out what I didn't necessarily like as much. And so with ticket sales, it wasn't so much that I didn't enjoy it. I'm a competitive guy, like a lot of people that are and get involved in sports and in the sports industry. So I enjoyed being able to work with my colleagues and go against each other, see who could, bring in the most in group sales in 1 week or whatever contests we were doing. But it felt so much like all we cared about was the end, where in development, it's more about how you get to that end. So obviously, at the end of the day, we're going to be driven by metrics about how much money we're raising or how many visits we go on. But I think you can't really get lost too much in all the things that come for the donor and the alum throughout the process, because we're in a relationship building business. And one of the things I really take pride in is wherever I'm at, wherever I'm working, I'm going to be the biggest fan of that place while I'm there, because it's a reality in our business. People move around. So you can't be stuck on every place that you have some tie to. But when you're with me at UIC right now, I care about how I'm affecting an alum's relationship with UIC, which in turn, if they have a good experience or if I'm able to bring them in closer to something that maybe they didn't see before they got involved with our office or before somehow I got in front of them, I feel like that's moving the needle more than just how much did I raise from them or how much of that sale did I make. So having the opportunity to understand what development was all about, when I got a year of ticket sales under my belt, I really was driven to the fact that there's a mission behind it, and it's mostly about people and how you can connect others to help the student athletes, cadet athletes, and really drive that revenue, but also about the feel good stuff that you can't really measure that really helps build community. So I just love being a part of that process.
Good stuff, Mike. Janelle, I joked earlier about you being the smartest person in the room with a degree in biochemistry. How do you get from, being an undergraduate and deciding you're going to major in biochemistry and moving over into a development role?
So that was actually very interesting. I always joke that I had a quarter life crisis sitting at my desk at work, where I really was sitting there, and one of my coworkers was discussing that the position we were in was something that he was going to retire doing. And I was like, oh my goodness, people expect me to do this for another 30 years of my life. And I was like, absolutely not. And I thought to myself, like, what is it that I want to do for the rest of my life? And I've always had a passion for sports. I grew up playing sports. Even before I was born, I was participating in sports. My mom was a coach. So by the time I was, even before I was born, I was on the sideline of a basketball court. So I tried to figure out a way that I could be involved in sports and really hone in my passion for connecting people and helping people. And I kind of threw my hat into a bunch of rings and saw what really would fit me best. And I talked to some of my advisors in my graduate programs, and they kind of broke down what college athletics was to me and the different silos of how the departments work. And like I said, I took internships in marketing and development. And after a year, I decided that development was what really spoke to me, and that connection that you build with donors and just connecting them with student athletes and their passions for really bettering either the university and the athletic department as a whole, or specific athletes and scholarships and things like that, and just really putting some action behind a passion. I think that that's really what athletic development is about. And it's the putting action behind words that I think that makes this an awesome job. And it's exciting. No 2 days are the same, like if you ever ask, like, if someone asks you, like, what's your day gonna be? You don't know. Like, you can't tell people what your day is gonna be like. And I love that. So that's what really made this one of those things where this is something that if I turn to my coworker now and they were like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna retire doing, I'm not gonna panic and go try and find another career. So that's how I got here.
That's unique. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now,
Mhm.
Chris, we're going to move to you and ask you if you can discuss mentorship a little bit that you've received over the years and talk about one thing that you've learned that maybe has changed your career.
Yeah. First of all, there's been too many people that have touched my life to list. My parents are obviously at the apex of that list. And I think a lot of the values and the work ethic and the determination that they instilled in me, I try to live out every day. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say Matt has done an extraordinary job as my mentor in the Bobby Purcell Mentor program. But I think above and beyond that, I've worked for some incredible athletic directors through the years. I've been a part of some incredible conversations with the Big Ten Joint Group through the years that really opened my eyes to the breadth of what college athletics affords young people and the transformational qualities it has. A couple of people probably stick out. Jim Phillips and Beth Getz through the years have always placed such a profound emphasis on the totality of the student athlete experience and keeping that at the core of what we do. I think at times we get lost in the excess of college athletics, the opulence of facilities. We get, mesmerized by trying to woo benefactors. And at the end of the day, we're here for the kids. And I think their constant reminders through the years of keeping them at the core of who we are and what we do have been critical. And then I also think we need to have fun. We're really, really blessed and fortunate to work in a really high octane, really special industry. We don't have to sit behind a desk every day. We don't count the minutes until 5 o'clock hits and can't wait to go home. We get to work nights and weekends. And I think at times, whether it's been Mark Goyle or Gene Taylor or Gary Barta, who I've worked with through the years, they've been really, really good about making the experience fun along the way. So I think keeping the student athlete at the core of who we are, making sure you live each day with integrity and making sure you have fun along the way are all a couple pieces of advice I've gotten through the years that have guided my career.
Awesome. And there's obviously a reason you were chosen to answer that question first. But Mike, can you answer that same question and talk about mentorship in your career?
Almost caught myself again, over a year and still can't get this right. I think similar to what Chris said, I think mentorship is just natural to us as human beings. And it starts at home. Having an older brother who was really driven in his career, doing what he does, and having two parents that are there. I think they're even watching right now, people that you can look up to throughout your life to show you how things are supposed to be done. And no different to when you get into your professional life, having those people that are going to help guide you. Sometimes it happens naturally. And I think I got lucky to have so many driven individuals working at the University of Pennsylvania at the same time as I was. But just like Chris said, also to look at athletic directors that, maybe I wasn't in any type of regular communication with them, but just seeing from afar how they lead, working under Grace Calhoun, Boo Corrigan, and now I'm able to work with Michael Lippitz, who, just being able to look at those people from afar and kind of see how they do things and how they put the pieces together. Because I know we may touch on it later, but I think being an athletic director is something I may want to do someday. And so I've wanted to position myself to understand how I could get there, and following leaders along the way, like the leaders at Penn, the leaders at West Point, the leaders here at UIC that have helped me get to where I am, but also continue to grow. That's been really important. And even having the opportunity, if folks are able to, when we're back to some type of normalcy, go to the NACDA convention. I would, if I saw somebody, if it's at the lobby bar, if it's between going to different sessions, whatever it is, I'm not afraid to just go up and say, hey, I know you from so-and-so. Can I ask you a quick question? Or can I, get 5 minutes with you? And I did that one year and got an athletic director who I didn't know other than just a press release about his most recent job. He was somebody that said, sure, I'll give you 10 minutes, let's chat. And one thing that he told me was just be the best at what you're doing, where you're doing it. And if you continue to have that mindset everywhere you are, you're going to keep getting to where you want to be. You're going to keep enhancing the experience for the student athletes that you're serving, and you're just going to live a full life and career in what we're doing, just focusing on that, what seems like a pretty simple idea.
That's great. And I think the coolest thing you guys both said, and you started your answers with how your family really helped you through all your life and was a mentor through this process and the field that you chose. So I think that's really cool. Good work there. So want to talk about long-term aspirations now and how you plan to get there. Emily, we're going to let you answer that question first.
So I will preface this question with I still struggle on a daily basis kind of what I want to do long term. This is one thing I panicked about a lot when I entered this industry of I have to know what I want to do right now and I have to be so set in it. And the more I get involved and the more people I talk to, the more I realize I don't need to have my 40-year plan mapped out. I do love fundraising. I do want to stay in development. Right now, I'm currently running the annual fund, and that's it's an interim and hoping that it's going to become full time, but that's what I want to do for the next few years. And then I know eventually I would like to run my own shop. So between that, I'm going to need major gift experience, and I know that. And so that's kind of where right now trying to get some of that as I can and talk to our major gift officers who are doing that now, talking to other schools, seeing what, how people are making that transition. And then I go back and forth on after that, if I want to be an AD. I think originally I said I did not want to do that. And then the pandemic actually has kind of made me look at our ADs across the country and seeing who's handled things really well and maybe who hasn't, and kind of what challenges people are facing. And it's been really eye-opening to watch our leadership, and both like at UVA and in the ACC and then in the country, how people have handled it and how they're approaching their staff and the student athletes. And everyone has done such a great job, and things are happening with such grace and ease. And I know that's not how it is, but this has sort of made me realize, oh, this is kind of what I want, is to be able, hopefully there's not another pandemic, but to be able to take a crisis and a new situation and to pivot and come out of it with a plan and with action items and with assuring your staff and your student athletes and your fans, donors, everyone that, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. So my current position right now, I'm thinking maybe AD, but it changes. 3 to 5 year plan is kind of where I'm focused right now.
That's completely fair. Janelle, what about you? What are some of your long-term goals?
Well, one short-term goal is to change out my chair really quickly. Sorry, I'm in a conference room that I got the wonky chair. I've been sliding down this entire webinar. Okay, sorry about that. Long-term goals, I kind of agree with Emily where I've been waffling on this, where I do want to, I think everyone in the back of their mind wants to sit in the top seat. And at this point, I don't know if that's the top seat in a development shop or the top seat as an AD. So I think though the best way to get there in either place is to know what's going on in every place in the department, because I don't think there is a good way to raise money for an athletic department without knowing what you're raising money for. Like it's very hard to speak on how you're raising money for facilities if you don't know how facilities are run. There's not a good way to raise money for a specific sports program if you don't know how programs are run. So being able to speak fluently on these different topics, I think is really important for development officers. Like we have to know a lot about a lot of things. Like even though we have a very specific goal in mind, like bringing in revenue, we have to know about everything that's going on. When donors come in, even if they're making a gift to the golf program, they're gonna wanna know like what's going on with the football coach, or like, how are we spending our money that came in with that big gift, or how you got an endowment for a such and such position, or, these types of things. So you have to be literate with things across the entire department. It's an interesting position that we're in, and it's one that requires continual learning. So I think that that's the thing that that you have to do to get to the top is you never can stop learning. You have to know about your student athletes. You have to know about the people in the support positions. You have to know about everything that's going on horizontally to you, things below you, things above you. So if you want to get to the top, you have to know about basically everything that's going on around you. Like, it's an intricate web, and all of the arms that are connected, make it, all of that information moves together, and you have to know everything that's going on. So to get to that top position, you can't neglect all of the information that's going on around you, because that someone's going to ask a question, and that question could be coming from someone that's really important. And if you don't have that answer, what type of relationship did you just damage? So I think that that's the really important part of how do you get to the top, is knowing the little things. I think that the little things that get overlooked, everybody knows, know the basics and all of that. That's the easy part. It's the little things that get overlooked are the difference between making it to the next level. So.
Thanks, Janelle. Mike, what are some of the things that you look long-term in your career?
I think similar to what Emily said, it's and Janelle, it's kind of a natural idea to think of moving up to the AD chair, but me being the competitor that I am, I've definitely thought of that being the long-term goal, and I think it's something that I would enjoy, but similar to what Emily said, I'm really thinking more in what the next 3 to 5 years brings, and keeping that as a long-term goal, potentially being an athletic director one day. I think the last few years and getting to see a few different schools and different sizes has helped me understand that the job that you take, no matter what level it is, it's going to be different based on what type of school you're at. How big is your undergraduate population? Is it in an urban setting? Is it suburban setting? All these things really kind of play into making where you're at more important than what job you have, in my opinion. And so I'm really focused on doing a good job of where I'm at and getting as close to mastering it, whatever that means for me, as I can, with kind of this long-term view of, maybe one day I'll find a place where I really want to be the athletic director and that opportunity opens up. But for now, I want to be the best annual fund director I can be and try to get as many major gift prospects and plans moved along as possible, and then eventually see what comes next after that.
When I think that theme you and Emily hit on of just the next 3 to 5 years and doing what your current role requires as good as you can is a great message for everybody. Chris, you've recently taken that step into the lead fundraiser at a university. What are your goals beyond that?
Right now, it's getting out of the pandemic and being able to see donors. That would be a great start, not an opportune time to make that transition. But I think it's maximizing our team and making sure right now our team has what it needs to be able to be successful. I would say personally, longer term, I think much of what everyone else has said is also kind of an aspirant goal for myself. Again, going back to the importance of mentorship, I've been around some tremendous people that have showed me the power that athletic director chair and even the conference commissioner chair yields, and how that power can transform the lives of young people. I'm a sitting example of that. So I think those are all things that are still kind of 10, 15, 20 years down the road, something that I aim and aspire to be able to realize. But I think right now it's being able to get through, finishing class here on campus this spring, being able to see donors this summer and trying to figure out what the fall looks like.
We are all there for sure. No question about that. Emily, I want to ask you what advice you would give a young professional just starting out in development.
Absolutely. So I will reiterate connections, networking. If that was not made obvious enough by this, that's huge for you and for everyone. And it's not just enough to email or call someone and say, hey, can we chat? That's a great first start, but continuing that relationship and that cultivation of it. Some of the most amazing mentors and relationships I have are people I talk to every month or every few months. And if you haven't talked to someone in a while, reach out and say, I saw you played last night, great game, or, this is upcoming, or I had a question about this, and with that, using your resources. So obviously NAD, great resource. I'm also a member of Women Leaders, and that's been really helpful. There's a lot of overlap between NAD and Women Leaders. And so that has gotten me miles and connections and all of these things that are fantastic. I would also say getting involved, and I think there was a question earlier in the Q&A about this, but not just within your department, within development, but getting involved outside of your development window, because as we know, we have to know what's going on, but we also are kind of isolated in a lot of things because we're out on the road, we're raising money, we're dealing with donors. We don't always talk to our student athletes or, the nutritionists or the athletic academic service people, whoever they are. So getting involved and getting to know them and volunteering at a soccer game or, helping scan tickets if you need it. That for me has been a really great way to meet people in the department and to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. If I am talking to our SWA, I can say, one day I would like to be an SWA. How did you get to where you are? You're running external. What kind of connections and steps did you take? So that's a great way also to just not only learn the department, but get involved and have that relationship. And the other thing I would say is within your department, then within development, continuing to do the work, staying hungry, go to events, talk to your major gift officers, go on visits, see if you can sit down with them, learn the gift processing, kind of the back end stuff. Not so much that you have to do it, but just if a donor asks a tax question, for me, that's a big thing, especially with the tax change a couple of years ago. Donors want to know. And if you don't know, it's like, oh, I got to figure it out. So asking those kinds of questions on the front end so you can answer on the back. And most of the time you start with an annual fund knowledge. So benefits, tickets, parking, kind of all of that. But that's insanely helpful to know as you're going on the road, because a lot of fundraisers, you're going to get asked, well, how do I get football tickets on the 50-yard line? Every school is different. But for me, that's been helpful with talking to donors of them saying, well, I want to give, but I kind of don't really know where to give. And I really want seats here. What can I do? So that's another way to meet people, first of all, but then to have that knowledge and that understanding. And again, starting out, you're going to do stuff you don't want to really do sometimes, and stuff is not always going to be glamorous and pretty. It frustrated me to no end my first 6 months when I thought, oh, I'll get to go on the road and travel. And it's like, no, you're in the office, you have to make your phone calls, you have to send your emails. And so, but work into that, because that's the part where you're making the foundation and you're setting that standard, and you do your work, you do it well. Then people are going to say, okay, great, now you can go on the road. Okay, great, now you can take on more responsibilities. And that's how you, again, continue that relationship, those connections. And I mean, to Janelle's point, that's how you earn your kind of networking internally, and people will see that and they'll want to promote you, or they'll want to recommend you to another job if you're applying or whatever that.
Awesome. And I think without you even realizing it, you answered one of the Q&As that popped up a few minutes ago. How do you work with people outside the development office in your department to not only further your network and your career, but also work together and make the department successful as a whole? And you touched on that wonderfully. So thank you for that. Janelle, I want to ask you the same question and any advice you'd give a young professional getting into development.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of say similar things to Emily's, is that leaning into that fun little line in your job description, other duties as assigned. It's that dreaded thing where, it's that unknown that encompasses all of the grunt work that no one wants to do. But there are some jewels in there. There are some things that you find out that might be the thing that really shape your career in that other duties as assigned, that thing that might be that special project that you take on that, can be the career defining moment. There's some things in there that might be the special fundraising project that you don't know, a new program that you can start. Like there we mentioned that there's no, like, it's just raising money and there's no new ways to do it. Yeah, but there are maybe new target groups that you can focus on and things like that. And maybe a new way of thinking of it that hasn't been done at your school specifically. So it might be a little bit annoying to do because there's no foundation for it where you are, and you have to do all of the legwork. You know, it takes time. It's exhausting, all of those things. But, you know, if you put the sweat equity into all of these things, you have to think about all of the things that where you get the return on investment. You know, if you work to build something up and you can say like, hey, I started something from the ground up somewhere, or I helped build something, you know, those are things you can take on with you like throughout your career. You know, you can say like, I helped start a such and such program at this school. I helped, you know, shape this that is now a staple here. Or even if something doesn't work out, like you can say, okay, that didn't work out, but why didn't it work out? You know, like you have these things that are opportunities. Not everything is going to be a great idea, but like, try it. Like, try something. That's something to do early in your career. Don't be afraid of things. You know, people are timid early in their career. I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing. You know, don't do crazy things. Don't call the top donor at your school without, you know, without talking to people or anything like that. But, you know, try things that if you have an idea, speak up, you know, things like that. Don't think just because you're the new person or you don't have experience that you don't have a good idea. Those things aren't synonymous. Just because you don't have experience doesn't mean that you don't have a good idea. So, you know, believe in yourself. Yeah, confidence is key. I don't think anyone would be in development if they didn't have confidence. So, you know, take that confidence that got you to where you are and you know, use it.
Yeah, that's good advice from both of you. So thank you for sharing that. Want to turn to you, Mike, and ask you a question about the hardest lesson and a learning moment that you've had in your career so far.
Sure. I think it's a lesson that I continue to come back and learn. It's a recurring thing, but just trying to control the controllables. And that kind of spans over a bunch of different areas in what we do. But I think with me having the opportunity to get experience at multiple different institutions, one frustrating thing that comes with that is relearning how different places do certain things. So perfect example is right now I'm under a system with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Springfield, and us here in Chicago, which they just do things very differently than when I was at a place like Penn, where I leave West Point out of that because I was more of a frontline fundraiser and didn't have as many of these other responsibilities that I do here and like I did at Penn. But knowing that you can only take certain things so far at a certain point, and you want to use your energy towards advancing things as far as you can, but not trying to will things that can't happen or aren't set up to happen a certain way. And I'm speaking somewhat vaguely, but I think everybody kind of has an idea of those things that they try to make happen a certain way, but there's a process you have to adhere to, and you have to stick to that. And I think that kind of really plays into what Emily was saying about knowing what people outside of your department do, because there'll be times where you need to talk to your person in marketing or your person in communications or compliance. You know, we really touch every area of the athletic department, but also when you talk about the relationship with central advancement, you know, if you're working with a university system like I am now, you've got to know a lot more people even outside of your department. So knowing who to go to when you need help, because you're going to need help, just like you're going to need your mentors and your network to help you through certain things, and figuring out how to get something done is not always going to be something you can do on your own, but knowing when to ask for help, knowing when you need to just let something work itself out, or who to go to if you need to push something along. And I think that's something I, again, continue to try to remind myself, but it's it's a really good thing to just keep in mind no matter where you are in your career, but especially starting out.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. And Emily, asking you that same question, just what's the hardest lesson you've learned early on in your career?
I think for me, it's learning how to advocate for myself. I don't mean that in like standing up and having confidence. As Janelle said, you have confidence if you're in this industry in some capacity. But for me, I was very much used to people as a GA, and then even in undergrad, people kind of tell you what they expect. And if you don't do it, then you fail. And that's that. So coming to UVA was very much, there's not a whole lot of set expectations. There's your job description and there's things you have to do. And if you don't know how to do something, you're supposed to ask. But I was too afraid to ask. So especially my boss, my direct supervisor left about 5 months in. So I'm still learning the ropes. I'm still trying to figure out what the annual fund looks like at UVA and my institution. I'm still figuring out my donors, kind of what that is. And all of a sudden I didn't have that person that I could ask questions to. And I was too afraid to go directly to the executive director or to, the CFO or something and say, I have a question. I don't know what this means. I don't know how to do this, because I thought that would be a weakness, or that was something that, they would say, well, why did we hire this girl? She's an idiot. So I would sort of just sit on things and not understand, and I would fight my way through it, and it made me frustrated and just all around not a happy camper. And so I learned very quickly that I needed to learn how to advocate for myself, because people aren't always going to check in on you. And some people will, but even so, it's like, if someone says, are you doing okay? Do you need help? You have to say, yes, I need help, or no, I'm not doing okay. I'm frustrated by this. And I finally figured that out about 3 months into the pandemic, and I'm still embarrassed by this story, but I sent a text to my executive director and said, I'm frustrated. I need to talk. This pandemic I don't know how I'm supposed to work from home. We were 3 months in, and I still had not figured out the sitting by myself. I'm a huge extrovert. I didn't understand how to, network with donors and phone calls, and people weren't answering. And I knew at that point I wanted to sort of take on more responsibility with the annual fund, and I didn't know how to tell him that. And so I still was afraid to call him. So I sent a text, and he calls me, and we talked about it. And that's truthfully the reason I'm here now, because finally, and I was just so afraid he wouldn't listen. And he's like, you never said anything. And so that's kind of where I've learned, when you are frustrated, or when you're overwhelmed, or when you want more responsibility and you want more to take on, you have to tell people that, and they aren't just going to look at you and know. And if they are, fantastic. But for me, that's made my relationship with my now boss much better, because I can go to him and say, this is kind of where I'm feeling overwhelmed. This is where I need help. This is what I've got. And he trusts me a lot more on things, and he's given me a lot more responsibility. And so that has made me a much better employee and a much happier person. And just in terms of going forward with that, knowing that I have to continue to stand up for myself and ask for help, but also ask for more things. So kind of what Mike said, knowing kind of when to ask and who to ask and where to go to, and watching out for yourself is, at the end of the day, no one else is going to do that for you. So you have to take it into your own hands. And I still am struggling with it some days, but that's definitely the hardest thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. We are just about out of time. There was a question down there, maybe putting you on the spot. Any interview prep techniques that you guys can just give a 5 to 10 second answer on, and anybody is open to answering that?
I think read and study. Read as much as you can about the institution, know on the back end as much as you can about the personnel dynamics and the org structure, and prepare.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, Chris. I see nodding heads throughout the panel as well. So with that being said, I want to thank our panel for their time today. Appreciate you guys joining us. Thank everybody that watched and interacted with us through the chat and the Q&A. And I'll hand it back over to Grant, but appreciate everybody being involved.
Thanks, Matt. To Janelle, Emily, Mike, and Chris, thanks for your time and energy today. That was wonderful. And Matt, great job. I appreciate you leading us with this effort today. So for the community, please stay tuned for details regarding our next webinar. It's going to take place on April 29th. The topic is diversity, equity, and inclusion fundraising. Get ready to hear some of how our peers have implemented DEI fundraising into their departments over the last year. Should be a wonderful session. Thanks again for joining us today, and have a great evening.